But I wanted to include this email I got last week. It's not a question, but it did come into the mailbag from a longtime listener of the show, Subir, in Toronto. He has been listening since 2012. He was only 13 years old at the time. He is now 21, as if I don't feel old enough. Summerslam was, of course, in Toronto this year. He was not at the pay-per-view. He was actually here in New York, and he flew home on Sunday night. This would have been last Sunday. And when he got in, he went to the gym where his friend works. This is around 1 o'clock in the morning. When he gets to the gym, who should he see but Vincent Kennedy McMahon working out with his trainer. And Subir is freaking out. Vince eventually finishes up. He comes walking by the front desk where he and his friend are, and they start chewing his ear off about the product. And I don't mean like chewing his ear off in a negative way. They're just telling him what an impact wrestling has had on them since they were kids. And Vince asks them, he goes, "Can you make it tonight?" That being to Monday Night Raw. And they said yes, and he gave them tickets to the show. He had them left at will call for them. And it wasn't until they got to the arena that they realized that they were front row seats. And he says, "I also wanted to say that while we were talking to him, he seemed genuinely interested in what we were saying and appreciative of our years of fandom. I must say that I did not expect for Vince to be as nice of a guy as he came off that day, but I am definitely happy to know that he is. And with all of these stories you hear about him, you wonder what's true and what's not." But Subir shared photos in his email of him with Vince at the gym, and Vince giving the little thumbs up, and he shared a photo of him sitting in the front row that night at the show. That's very cool. That is very cool. Honestly, every story that I have heard from someone who has actually met Vince McMahon or run into him has always been a positive one. I've never heard anything bad in terms of him, running into fans and being a dick or anything like that. A friend of mine ran into him many years ago down in Florida, not far from where he has another home. This was years ago. And the same thing, cool guy. I met him too, although it's a little bit different because when I met him, that was 25 years ago. So, yeah, I've shared that photo before on my Twitter and on my Facebook page. Where Vince is looking into the camera and I'm looking off to the side with a big smile on my face like I saw like a Playboy model walk by or something. But I mean, I was like 12 at the time, so I didn't have a whole conversation with him. Just don't be around him, I guess, on a Monday or a Tuesday night, and then he's fun to be around. I mean, the best thing recently was the story that Sean Waltman told on his podcast about being at Triple H's 50th birthday party a few weeks ago. And Vince was off in an area all by himself. I mean, you got people on the lake. You got people, doing all kinds of activities. And then off in that section over there is Vince McMahon doing some axe throwing. You get people riding jet skis and go-karts. They had all kinds of activities going on. And there's this 74-year-old man glued to the axe throwing station that they had set up. Why you would even have an axe throwing station at a birthday party, I don't know, but that sounds pretty cool. But there's Vince McMahon throwing axes. So anyway, I just wanted to share that. I thought it was a cool story. And also, look, I talk about Vince McMahon in terms of the product and everything that we see on television, which he oversees, and the XFL and all this other stuff. And there's a lot of very passionate opinions about Vince McMahon as a person, as a promoter, and about the product, frankly, that he has been putting out now for a very long time. And has he lost a step? And, should he step aside and retire? And, we've talked about this so many times before. But a lot of it tends to be negative. So when I hear a story like that, and I see the photos and it gets backed up and everything, you know what? I'm going to share that story. Just in the interest of being even on all sides. I think it's important to hear that there is another side to this guy where he actually is very cool to the fans and the people that he meets, which isn't always the case when it comes to some of these wrestlers when you meet them in public. But I've never heard a negative story about Vince. I'm not saying that there are none that exist, but I've not heard any stories or personal experiences from people who have seen him or bumped into him that were negative in any way.